I feel like that's part of the reason why WoW Classic did so well. I think it was a threefold tactic. One, everyone who hadn't played WoW what is a challenging game where I feel rewarded for my stuff? I have not felt rewarded for any drop in Final Fantasy XIV since Coil. Like, I get drops and I go, cool, I got my Savage drop, and that's it. Like, but back in Coil, I'd get my Black Mage outfit, and I'm like, look at me, I am gonna go stand right where you can all see me because I want you to know. I remember back in Coil,
it's the concept of gear lust.
We stood on the steps of Mordona just hanging out so people could see our gear.
Yep.
And now I get my gear and I'm like, I'll just go to my house.
Welcome, everybody, to the Casually Hardcore Podcast. We almost did another mini podcast just in the intro while we were waiting for it to come alive. So we want to welcome Benny from Comicstorian and Eligible Monster back to the program for episode 44. My name is Brian, and we were very happy to sit here and talk about Final Fantasy. This is going to be a casually hardcore conversation, but it's really going to lean into Final Fantasy XIV Patch 5.1, which we had all hoped was going to be out by now, but now we get to sit here and talk about it. We've all, I think, had a really good experience with Shadowbringers, and there's also going to be stuff coming up about content creation, YouTube, the algorithm. Whenever you get YouTubers together, I guess there is a requirement that we discuss the algorithm, perhaps, maybe a little bit.
We have to have the complain period where we complain about the ad revenue and SEO and all that stuff, and then you have here's how we should fix it, and then it doesn't work, and then we get back to that in a few months.
And then everybody who's like not a content creator is like, whatever, like
they'll leave.
It's like, all right, like it's like, well, if your life depended on like an equation, you'd be really interested. Anyway, so we're gonna be diving in a lot into Final Fantasy 14 and it's a podcast, so we're all 14 players here, but other games are probably gonna come up because we're also enjoying other games as well right now, and that's going to be a big part of the conversation. So my first real question, just to dive in, kick it off, Benny, as a bard main, how happy are you right now?
I am ecstatic. I mean, it's going to be a crappy update to us, but it's something. It was actually, so since I talked to you guys, I joined up into a raid group. It's just a bunch of normal raiders. We get on a nightly basis to play, going through it, and it was almost like a month into the group that they were like, so what do your songs do for us? I'm like, absolutely nothing. Like, I'm here for just battle voice and troubadour. That's all I got.
I used to be a utility, but then they introduced dancer.
Yeah, and, I don't really do much. You guys want me to level dancer?
You wonder, like, the conspiracy theorist to me is like, go play dancer. All right. So like, we'll bring it back.
Bringing it back, I know it's not going to be as strong as Stormblood, which I find funny because the Stormblood increase was only 2%. I couldn't remember what it was, so I looked it up, and it's like, it was a 2% crit buff. I'm like, so it was negligible back then, but it existed. And so I'm like, what's it going to be, 1%? If it's not going to be as strong as Stormblood?
Yeah. 1.9%. Like, okay.
But hey, it's something. I do something again, so I'm happy.
Well, it's also that incentivizes the singing and all of that. And I think a lot of people, like, and again, it's like when we always expect 5.1 and 5.2 to kind of be like, okay, let's adjust some of the jobs now that we've seen the raid and things like that. Right. So it's going to be fun.
I mean, you are right. It will incentivize actually singing, because right now, each of the songs does something for me. And there's a weird spot in the rotation where you could fall out of the rotation due to like phase shifting and stuff like that. There's been times where I'm like, I know it's going to hurt my DPS a little, but I'm going to let the rotation fix. And like, I'll wait the extra 6 seconds and have no song up while it rotates back to the one I want. Now it's going to be like, oh, put the crap one up and figure it out, you know?
Are you excited about the sound change for Apex Arrow?
I don't see why that was even needed, but sure.
It was interesting that it was mentioned in the live letter because, like, oh, finally, as a
means there's a thread somewhere of people just going nuts. They're like, just stop.
Yeah. Anyway, so for this podcast, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud. Be sure to check, obviously, our last show out with My Name is Bife. talking about Destiny 2 lore and his journey with Destiny, which was a really excellent show. Also, we want to thank our partnership with Exit Lag. Link is in the description below. You can also use the code DOWORK for 20% off if you are having lag issues. I've heard a lot of good feedback from people with this kind of channel promotion. So we want to thank them for that, sponsoring the channel and helping us do this thing like this podcast. But with the business concluded, let's go ahead and talk about what we're playing real quick, because it really kind of ties into the theme of 5.1 and our positives and negatives of Shadowbringer so far. Chris said in the pre-show that he is, I guess, not so keen or not so excited anymore about 5.1, and that's been driving Benny nuts.
I want to know why, because
I'm just mixed.
As a player who's been around since 1.0, I let me see if I can pinpoint your issues with it.
Yeah.
Either you're a Sam or Nin main, you're one of those two, or because you guys, if I'm not wrong, you guys kind of came in around the beginning of Stormblood, right?
As content creators, I'm a 1.0 guy.
I've been around since ARR.
But from a content creation perspective, right at the end of Heaven's Word, right into Stormblood. That's when we actually had our channel, etc.
Because the biggest complaint I normally see when these patches start dropping is that it's a lot of rehash content, which I do agree with. It's a lot of the same stuff that we always see. They go a very safe route, which I wish they wouldn't always do. But we do eventually get new stuff. But I mean, unless you're a Ninja main or a Sam main, or you just don't like the fact that we're getting the new thing we got. What's that?
What's the last new thing we got, in your opinion?
New thing? Like a new attempt? Eureka. They normally give us like one thing per expansion at this point. We got Heaven on High was Heavensward. Eureka was Stormblood. Yeah, that's it.
Just setting the tone.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're not wrong. And I agree with you on that. They play a very safe route.
Yeah.
Like to the point where new players hit me up and I'm like, we can know exactly what's going to happen, guys. You don't have to speculate.
Do you think that has a lot to do with 1.0?
I do. Since A Realm Reborn did so well, I think it did too well. So even if they want to try new things, I think they're too scared. I think it's very much like, no, just do, here's Savage, and then we're going to do 24-man, and then we're going to do a dungeon, and then, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very set path.
It's golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Through and through.
And the problem is, it hasn't hurt them yet.
Right.
Like, as much as the players like us that have been around forever are complaining about it, they still boast increasing numbers. Whether or not that's true or not, they still boast it. So it's working.
Well, I mean, and then you look at just the success of Shadowbringers. And so you asked Chris a question. I'm gonna let Chris answer that. Like, is he right? Is he wrong? Like, what's the correction, Chris?
So I really just feel mixed, and it's nothing as in the short term or selfish as like changes to my class. Like, I'm a warrior main, and yes, I wish my gap closer was free, but it's nothing to do with that. Is it entirely as somebody who played WoW and watched it morph and change into something that I no longer liked? I love Final Fantasy. Shadowbringers was one of the best expansion experiences I've ever had. And when I start to think back to which one could be better, I have to start to question, like, okay, where was I at my time in my life and all that? And I have to start thinking about all these other factors because it was so long ago. So, like, they've really tapped into something incredible here. I watched lore, and that's like a big change for me because lore just hasn't been engaging enough for what I look for in a game to be something that I've taken seriously. And so I watched every single cutscene. I even read all the side quests. So, like, I picked up some things that Brian didn't. So, like, I have enjoyed the crap out of Shadowbringers. But then I look at the patch. Now, I wasn't horribly surprised by anything in the patch notes, especially because everything they told us at the media tour, everything they've told us at FanFest, like, we knew where this was going. Like you said, it's very predictable.
Yeah.
My frustrations were that we had a fear with it being casual bringers, and they have gone the direction of things like, we're going to make decent basically 100% for everybody, and we're going to, like, it's just these little notes where we start to make things so friendly to everybody. It's like when they announced that we were going to get all 10 skills or whatever. Like, no, like, you can't just let a kid eat ice cream for every meal. Like, at some point you have to be the bigger person, and you have to say, like, no, we know what's good for you, and we're going to do it even though you're complaining.
Right.
So all of my frustration is, yes, it will probably be a great patch. So that's the other thing, is if I go put a video out on this, like, why I think 5.1 shows cracks in the armor and why it concerns me for the long-term health of this game, 5.1 will boast record numbers. Ultimate will be top of Twitch, and people will go, see, Chris, you're wrong. I'm not talking about now.
I actually agree with you 100%. I've been complaining about this, that exact mentality, and I just had to accept it since Coil. Coil came out hard as hell. You had to be a very unique group to get in there. The game was still challenging. Everyone had roles. I've seen since A Realm Reborn the pattern of what you're saying. More and more casuals, more and more casuals. To the point where I gave up on Savage because there was no reason to do Savage. When they made easy mode raids, it was like, well, there's the story. So unless I have a solid group that I have fun with, I'm not bothering with Savage.
Right.
And that was why I gave up for so long.
Yeah, I was talking actually with Larry Czar about that thing, is that he really is raiding as a part of that strong integral group that he enjoys playing with. And that's the reason why they do Savage. Because him and I had a long conversation about that the other day. It was really insightful because unless you have that dedicated friend group, there really isn't an incentive other than like, hey, I'm checking a box or whatever. Now, everybody might have a different way that they incentivize with that specifically, right? So everybody driving themselves can say, okay, this is my goal. This is what I'm going to do. And that's great. And that's one of the things that I think, and I've called for numerous times, that giving players more sandbox, essentially. When we talk about why are these games, why do we see this huge spike with 14 content, wise, and then you see a huge drop off, is that there's just not like a lot of sandbox that to be played around with. The game is so based off of its narrative structure, which I love. Like I'm like, I am here. The story is the expansion. And then when I see a lot of people commenting things like 2 tomes in a raid, like what's different? Like, and I've seen that over and over and over again over since Stormblood, since now. And it's starting to mirror what we saw the problems with Destiny 2 back in the day. 2 tokens in a blue. I was like 2 tomes in a raid. Like, oh my gosh! Like, how do you go and kind of escape that trajectory? But for me, essentially, what helped me kind of come to terms with it in a way is that when we sat down with Yoshi P, and it's that the dev team, if they can, I guarantee you they will. What we have with 14 at its core is kind of the ghost of 1.0 to a lot of degrees. They never knew Heaven's Word was going to be a thing because they were just trying to salvage the ship. And ARR, and you're right, Golden Handcuffs was so well received that it is very difficult. And that's the reason why you don't see like currency as a part of Fates outside of Heaven's Word. I mean, outside of the new areas within Shadowbringers. It's technically not impossible, but it's technically like 10 to 20 times harder than it was to put it into the new areas to begin with. And so for me, I go, I'm here about the story. I'm here for the gameplay. I'm here for I love the community. I love playing this game. I'm trying not to set expectations, having met with Yoshi P, that they're not going to be able to deliver, because otherwise I will increasingly grow frustrated with the game. And so the question is, and this is a little bit of a pivot, but I really want to know, Benny, what's your thoughts? Because Yoshi P said that they've been working on a new game back since 2016. It just came out of pre-production like earlier this year. Like, is the trajectory from a narrative perspective setting up something else, something bigger in your mind, whether it's 4 years or 5 or 6 years down the road? Like, is it better from a business model to sit here and say, okay, we're going to just do what we can with 14 and we're going to just play it safe, but we're really like taking all this feedback and basically going to do something down the road with Yoshi P at the head of it?
Oh, I've actually toted this theory now since Shadowbringers ended, or right before it actually, that they're going to end with the end of Shadowbringers and introduce that new game.
Oh, seriously? You think it's going to be sooner?
I think
no
my theory
I would love that.
It's going to lead to another calamity, because that's what they were hyping up.
Yeah.
And we're going to not shut down 14.
Yeah.
But leave it. And my theory was based on the fact that we got New Game Plus, because they're almost going to they have a way to link them together or something to allow you to experience true 14, but here's the new game. 16 or 17 or 14.2 or whatever they want to call it.
Gosh, that is my dream, and I'm trying, and I've been so hesitant on beating that drum, because I too am on the Calamity perspective.
Yeah.
Narratively wise, like if we're ever going to get to Zodiark, we got to do like.
Oh, I think we're causing the other Calamity.
Yeah, I think it's going to be our fault.
I think the act of trying to prevent it is going to ultimately be what causes it. If we hadn't come over then we wouldn't have made the mess that's ultimately going to result in the problem. Like that, you know, spoilers incoming. At this point, I don't know if we still have to announce spoilers for people that haven't played Shadowbringers, but like, I think that, you know, a ghost of Emmett saying like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have gone that direction. Like he would have even been the one to prevent the calamity we're going to cause. So I think that we're going to make that mess. I don't think it results in a new game. I think it just results in a new take. The problem is that when I say the word casual, I don't mean that everybody needs to be like a perfect player. I'm not talking about the quality of their play. I'm not talking about the quality of their time. I'm talking about this just general, it's good for everybody. I'm talking about this just appeal to everybody. And it's the direction that WoW went. And it's the reason I don't think 14 will move to a new game is the same reason WoW hasn't moved to a new game. There's too much money involved. You have an entire development team working on whatever other project Yoshi P is working for, and that thing is probably entirely cash funded by 14. Straight up. They're not pulling into debt. There's no investors. They're just throwing cash at it. And you can only do that as long as you keep the cash cow alive. So I don't think they'll ever stop developing 14. I think there will always be a new expansion. I think the expansions will just feel more and more and more empty. And that's what WoW did, is they leaned, if you go listen to like Ian Hanacostas talk about the game, they got to the point where rather than sit down and go on a company retreat like 14 does and say, let's build something as a core group and let's pour our lives and our souls into this, which is probably unhealthy for them as individuals because they dump so much into this game. I don't know how they have time for family and all that. And instead they say, we ran the analytics and it told us what fun was. Mm-hmm. Fun was you played this 20 hours, therefore it's fun. No, I played it 20 hours because that was the only way to get that item. And raiding is not fun without that item. Right. That doesn't mean that 20 hours is fun. So like Brian and I, we talk a lot about when we review games, like this $1 per hour theory. I'll play any game as long as I can get $1 per hour. But what is an hour? An hour for me is an hour of joy, not an hour of gameplay. So if an hour sucked, that hour doesn't count. Right. And so in the World of Warcraft, their analytics don't quantify those hours differently. And that's my concern here, is that they would spin up another expansion and they would say, the sub numbers are on the rise. People must still love this game.
I would say, I'll go ahead, Benny, please.
Well, I was going to say, actually, I had this discussion with somebody 2 days ago. And it's funny, it's not Final Fantasy, it's Destiny 2. Mm-hmm. And I have been kind of what you've been thinking about, Chris, for years now, because I've noticed a lot of games that I play, because I have a lot of time to play games, going in this.
Rub it in.
It's not a casual thing.
What a jerk. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love you.
I have as much time as you guys do after my work's done for the day. Anyway, yeah. My wife also plays, so we just play nonstop.
My wife did, and then we started breeding, but continue.
See, that was your mistake. That's where your gaming time went.
Well, today, in 5 years, I've got my own team.
You're making your own esports team.
Exactly.
I got you. Good idea. So anyway, games in general, because I don't like the idea of casual, because everyone there's like everyone's like the casual, the mid-core, the hardcore, and I kind of feel like the terms are just going out the window, because every game is trying to make it so that you're just going to hang out for a couple of hours, and they just try to and they're all going off of this idea that those couple of hours aren't going to be wasted, and they've all gone towards this idea that we're going to constantly reward you for playing it. And because I was talking to the guy who's trying to put together raids for Destiny 2, within the first 3 days, we beat the raid. Or for me when I got back. So it was like a week and a half, basically, because I was on trips for the first week. So it's like a week and a half, we got the first raid down. And then like last week, he was hitting me up and he's like, well, don't you want to get on and play more Destiny? I'm like, I'm getting on, but we've done everything. Like I can get on and I can accomplish minor goals, of course, over the course of like an hour or two. And if you look back, a lot of games have gone in that manner. Mm-hmm. Final Fantasy has gone more and more towards the idea of don't get on for 5 hours, get on for 2 or 3 hours. We're going to take that chunk of your time. And I don't like that because they're continually doing that to the point where now that I've gotten back into Savage, last time I hardcore Savage was Heavensward. Mm-hmm. I dropped out for Stormblood. I'm back in now. Apparently now because I've been getting the drops, they just drop a chest that I can open on any job I want instead of waiting for a very particular drop. So now, like, I'm gearing up a second job in Savage already. And it's within the first month and a half of doing it. While old school, we'd be doing this for months to gear up multiple jobs, praying that the drops all dropped. You know, every game is moving in the direction of trying to make it so that I can get into Savage now, complete it in an hour, geared up a whole new job, and we're good. You know, and Destiny, huh?
Is that Party Finder? Is it that Party Finder mindset that's just trickling into everything?
Maybe, because like we were trying to do Prague and E3, right? A Savage 3. We're still working on that right now. But when we got done, people in the group, they didn't say, okay, I'll see you guys next week. They went off and beat it in Party Finder. So now we've got people who already beat it. But I think it's that Party Finder mindset. It's that looking for raid mindset. Oh, I can just jump in and play the game. I can just jump in and do the story. I don't need to get really good, is really what it comes down to. I can get mediocre. In Destiny, and this is what I was talking about, Destiny hands you amazing guns for showing up to the fight.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get good with headshots. You don't have to get good with knowing the exotics or the optimal build. You don't need to know what mods are going to break through. There's like 2 things in that game where you need to know what you're doing. And everything else, you can roam around with your favorite gun and make progress. And Final Fantasy is doing that too. You can roam around whatever you want and make progress. You don't got to get super good. Just get good enough. And Fortnite works off the Battle Pass concept. So even if you're failing, you're progressing. You know, Rainbow Six is dropping a Battle Pass now. So even if you're failing, you're progressing. One of the reasons why I just restarted BDO is it's probably one of the last games that's difficult to make progress in. And going back into it, you can now AFK level. And I'm like, well, there goes that challenge. I'm just going to punch this thing for 10 hours while I do other stuff.
Is that why we're seeing such a resurgence of classic games? And knowing that you and I are both Final Fantasy XI, aficionados?
I feel like that's part of the reason why WoW Classic did so well. I think it was a threefold tactic. One, everyone who hadn't played WoW what is a challenging game where I feel rewarded for my stuff? I have not felt rewarded for any drop in Final Fantasy XIV since Coil. Like, I get drops and I go, cool, I got my Savage drop, and that's it. Like, but back in Coil, I'd get my Black Mage outfit, and I'm like, look at me. I am going to go stand right where you can all see me because I want you to know. I remember back in Coil.
It's the concept of gear lust.
We stood on the steps of Mordona just hanging out so people could see our gear. Yep. And now I get my gear and I'm like, I'll just go to my house. You know?
I played retail the week before Classic dropped, and I went and ran some old transmog runs, and I ran the weekly LFRs. And I got multiple new eye level increases, one of which Titan Forged. So I got like this just amazing statistical thing. My total eye levels went up, and then I went and ran Girl's Lair, and the Dragonspire trophy dropped. I was more excited about the DST, which has no value to me, because the DST was something I chased for 2 years, every weekly lockout on my hunter, and I never got it. And it represented a massive DPS increase, and it represented the ability to go in and take on content that I would not be able to take on without it. Like, it was just, the item was so much more than this item. There was a whole culture around it.
Right.
And that's gone.
And that's what I mean, because like even like Destiny, I hit 950. I didn't even know I did it. Like, I had raid gear, raid armor, and I just stumbled into 950, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm done on Warlock for the most part. Time to do that difficult grind, you know? But like at no point was I excited. I didn't get like stoked that I had beat the Destiny raid and got my armor and things like that. And I haven't felt like that in Savage. I'm having more fun just having fun in Savage. The drops drop, and I'm like, I'll take it if nobody wants it. You know, like I don't care. Like,
and that's just the symptom. Like it spreads to so much more, right? Because when you go into Party Finder, you don't talk to people, you don't talk about mechanics, you just get in there and you do it. And if somebody is doing a bad job, they don't know how to get better. They don't have to get better. You don't want them to get better. You kick them. They go into a group that can carry them. They don't improve. You don't improve. You just replace them and you move on. Yeah. As opposed to something like a WoW Classic or an 11, it's in my best interest to teach you to be better, because it hurts me for you to be bad. It hurts you for you to be bad. That's gone. And so I think that was my frustration with 5.1. There's nothing wrong with 5.1. Right. 5.1 is absolutely that girl in college that I met. We went on a date. She was great. That's it. Like, we just didn't hit it off. And I'm sure she went on to be this amazing woman who's in a loving marriage and has beautiful children and is very happy. But it wasn't going to happen between us. And so that's how I feel about 5.1, is like, maybe it's just not for me. Because there's nothing wrong with it. I'm really excited about restoring the Ishgard. Yeah. I'm really excited about the changes they're making to crafting and gathering. So like, I'm going to play the crap out of 5.1. But I can already tell that there will be a time in my life that I don't play Final Fantasy. Now, it should have been obvious that I wouldn't have played Final Fantasy when I'm 70, because like, what are the sheer odds that Yoshi P's still alive?
You're not a true fan then.
So, so I already knew that, okay, at some point in the next, 50 years, I'm going to quit this game. But now all of a sudden I'm asking myself, yeah, but will I be here in 5? And I can't answer it. I don't know. And it's because the pattern is just the pattern. And what are the odds they can write this good of a story next time around? Like, we can't expect them to have this good of a story every time. Like, Shadowbringers is one of those gems that I will cherish for the rest of my life. But
right, like Chains of Prometheus.
The story is
Chains.
carrying this expansion.
It's
carrying it.
I'm gonna jump in, and I think I try to set some context here, because I've heard you both kind of make an argument for Eureka and the fact that we're not getting that, because a lot of what Eureka was that 5-hour grind. That's actually one of the things that I struggled with, because I was like, I couldn't find the time, and that's just where I am in life. And I've also said it, to be completely clear, I don't need them to make this game for me specifically. Like, I want them to make, that's why I'm like happy with Classic success. I hope it continues to be successful despite all the like geopolitical issues going on right now. Not going to get into on this show. And that's why I really, really would love to see Final Fantasy XI remastered, brought to like consoles, computers nowadays. We haven't heard from mobile, etc. I long for that kind of content, even if I can't currently engage with that. And that's what I always felt like when you look at a theme park. Yoshi P is doing his absolute best as far as, trying to say like, yeah, here's this. But then we also have this kind of content. I think 5.1's weakness is that we haven't even heard about what this relic system is. And that actually makes me excited and nervous. And Eureka, not necessarily well received by everybody. I didn't engage with it, but I was like, I'm glad it exists. My frustration is that it expires. And we have to, I wish we could get out of the cycle of things that expire. I just don't know how. Because if Eureka was leveling content now, if I could go in and level up my jobs that I'm leveling through the roulettes right now, as a part of kind of this idea of Eureka, I think that would be a good balance, because these are some of the best designed zones that we've seen up until Shadowbringers. And I think that we can see them improving in certain areas because of that. I think also though is that the narrative is what 14 is. It's a numbered Final Fantasy game.
Right.
The narrative is what's important. What's weird about it is that we yet haven't seen like ARR completely go into this, either buy to player or just play through ARR at this point with Shadowbringers, because that is the challenge. I wonder if we'll see that adjustment come with 5.3, because they've said that's something like that's going to happen story wise to kind of help tighten up ARR. Because at the time, I know a lot of people like rag on it, but at the time, as a player who was one road to the 2.0, ARR was great. Even the fact that you had ridiculous quests and it tied into the primals, like I love that, because it was content to do and we had no idea what was going to happen. Now I think the fact that we can, with like reasonable accuracy, predict what is going to happen. Ultimately, they have to either transition us to a new game. So I actually 100% agree with Benny, and think Chris is wrong on this. Is that I think they're seeing what's happened with WoW. I think Yoshi P is watching and saying, well, obviously there's going to be an inflection point. He thought that was going to be Stormblood. He thought Stormblood was the apex, and it was all going to be downhill. I think that with this, their goal is to end on a high note. Any artist... And you always want to leave people wanting more. You always want to just kind of finish and and people cheer you back on stage for one final song. I think that if they're smart and they're playing their cards right, 14 is to lead into either a new narrative, or another game, and to say like, this is what it is. We're not taking it away. You can go experience that, but then go check out this new thing, because I think that's going to be ultimately what makes the most sense.
Going with that, they could very easily treat it like they're doing 11, where 14 still exists, still gets content, not massive, but we're going to please those individuals, and the plot continues on into 14.2 or whatever they're going to make it, and that is a game engine they built. They're able to do whatever they want with. They can make it work how they want to, and then I personally think that was the reason behind New Game Plus. Like, some people are like, oh, they're competing with WoW Classic. I'm like, they're competing with WoW Classic. They just had to be like, hey, you could reset your character, and you wouldn't have to make any system to make that work.
Right.
You could literally just go, okay, now my 80 bard, it's a level 1 again, and I can redo all stories because it's fun. Like, it's literally all you had to do. It would have been like 2 buttons in their system.
Yeah.
So there's too much thought put into a New Game Plus model, at least in my opinion, to it just be that. Here's New Game Plus, enjoy. You know,
it not having a reward is the other thing I was frustrated about.
That I did irritate me because I was like, I'm gonna do New Game Plus.
If this is supposed to be a leveling theme park, then how come all my alt jobs that haven't capped can't get experience their first time through New Game Plus? Right. I understand if you don't want me to farm it or whatever, and you don't want me to have the 300,000 gold that you get through the ARR story and all that, that's fine. But the fact that I can't get just a little experience, like experience is basically free in this game, like, and you couldn't even give that out.
Right.
Like at 50%, like just something, because it's like, okay, well, this is nice. Not anything to pull you out of essentially the mod. Yeah, challenge.
Oh, we get it for your first 5 story quests each week. Fine, then I'll do exactly 5 every week. It'll take me 10 years to get through the story.
I think, and you know, honestly, we're going to get with Mione. We've got him coming up on the podcast next. We'll hopefully be able to go hands-on with these systems and kind of get our, like, what does it actually feel like that now that we've got access to them? Because honestly, beyond the reward, my biggest hope that New Game Plus will either eventually be is an ability to actually go and experience these fights with your friends. I really wish there was an option to play together on more of the stuff. I get the narrative and the story piece of it, that it's us, because one of the things that was really interesting, I'd like to get Benny your thoughts on it, because I told this to Chris like a couple days ago. Somebody in the comments talked about, from the narrative perspective, that we actually aren't playing our characters. We're playing the Warrior of Light. That is the role we're playing. And just like in Guild Wars 2, you play the Commander. You're actually not playing whoever your character is. There is no option to be on the Horde or the Alliance or the Warriors of Darkness or the Warriors of Light. Like, we are playing this story and this character itself. Thus, there isn't really that sense of drama. Like you asked in the pre-show, like, you know, why do we not see dips like in World of Warcraft and some of these other games where with 14 it's big spike and then it goes off, and it's like there isn't any give and take. There isn't any of that drama that can happen as a part of the sandbox, with the exception of probably the Crystal Data Center. Like, role playing is a sandbox style game, but devs can never make enough content that we can consume, and it's all about trying to get people to sandbox. You even said that you go back to Minecraft being an ultimate version of a sandbox in which you just go and like, here's this, just go nuts. Final Fantasy XI, a sandbox. That it's that. I think what Chris said to me, and he can confirm if it's true or not, he says that what we hope to see eventually is a shifting and a return to what we would call a hybrid MMO, that theme park and that sandbox coming together so that you can have that narrative experience.
But classic has.
Right. And so the question I want to pose to you, Benny, is that do you think, though, that 14 being so narrative driven hurts it from a content creation perspective, which hurts people coming into the game itself, or do you think it's the subscription paywall?
No, I think it's the narrative, because going back to WoW, like bringing up why WoW maintains viewership and WoW Final Fantasy doesn't. I had said this for WoW Classic that we moved on before I finished the points, but I think that the narrative, I think, is amazing for 14, but I also think it hurts it to an extent because they are so focused on the narrative, we don't get anything interesting to do outside of it. It's not the proper way to say it. Since we can tell what's coming, there's no surprises. I mean, narrative is the only thing that we have that could surprise you. That's the surprise, right? Not knowing what Emmett is going to do and not knowing what Ishtola is going to do next. That's the surprise. Since everything else is pretty much just a repeat, I feel like that's where the content creation kind of dries up. Because WoW has the exact same problem where they come out with a bunch of new dungeons and stuff like that. Every patch they try something new, be it not every, but they try things like, be it a selfie cam or timeless isles. There's always a new crack at something that people can find interesting, and their PvP scene is really good, and they've got personalities that are able to support the game. Final Fantasy doesn't have the 20,000 viewership personalities. They got the personalities that people know, so no one's showing up here. I mean, I've chatted with Mr. Happy. I like the guy, but he's not pulling down 20,000 viewers when he hops on the game. He's not Osmodan over on World of Warcraft, where he goes live and it doesn't matter if the dude's standing in town, people are going to watch him. We've got personalities. What I'm saying is we don't have personalities that draw people in. Then you got to look at the content. WoW has a active PvP scene, and even with the theme park, it's very sandboxy. You could still run around and do a lot of the old content, like you were saying, Chris, and you have a lot of different areas to go to. And Final Fantasy, it's almost able, like when you log in and you see me go, I'm on a new job. You can go, okay, he's going to run 5 roulettes. He's going to run in the fates. He's going to do this. You know exactly what I'm going to do. But if you go on and I'm watching you level up, Chris, on WoW Classic, I don't know what you're going to do. Are you going to quest? Are you going to grind? Are you going to go do dungeons? There's so many different options.
Well, also, how are you going to build out your character?
Right. How are you going to build it out? What are you going to do?
Every bard's a bard. It's a strength from a mathematical perspective, and that's why we also have seen such kickback on like Eureka and Blue Mage, is that those are these alternate systems that kind of don't fit in the mold, which I love that they do. So to say like 14's not taking risk,
important.
I just feel like when you look at it, like I wish they would lean more into that, and I don't know what that would take. Does that take another 500,000 subscribers for that to happen, or is the engine itself that it's that it's so Jenga tower that it's like, okay, like it doesn't necessarily make sense. How do we fund whatever in that regards? You bring up a PvP point, and do you PvP in 14?
2 level. I can never get a good feast team, so I normally abandon it pretty quick.
I've been doing my PvP. Like I love PvP. I think PvP is a great piece of content that fills in gaps in PvE content. When we talk about the sandbox, it's that like you did the raid in Destiny or whatever. It's like Destiny has always kind of then become my PvP game. I will spend hours just running Crucible, because it's fast, it's effective, you just get in and out, and then I go and I do it in 14, and I go, man, like if they made 3 changes, like it would be so amazing.
WoW PvP is good, Destiny PvP amazing. That's what keeps me going around back to Destiny. I love Crucible, but what makes those interesting is I think the randomness. Even in PvP in Final Fantasy, you can almost tell what's going to happen because everyone's gotten so complacent and there's so many bots in it. Like once it starts rolling, more often than not, you're just kind of like, well, I know who's going to win. My team's got more bots. Well, this is the Bum Rush team. Well, this one got more DPS than I did, and they're going to outdo me here. It's too easy to just foretell what's going to happen in that match in Final Fantasy XIV. And it's also not all that interesting. It's go capture point, go blow up thing, 24 people fighting it out. I think they were trying to go for the giant open world, massive army battle thing, and they needed it to be closer to Battlegrounds. Like, oh, we're saving the dwarves, so I'm claiming this, that, and the other thing, and things like that. And there needed to be, and sadly, without being much customization, it's kind of easy to tell who's going to win each one-on-one fight. Like, there's no real, I can't come in there and be like, my bard can beat that paladin because I outgeared, or I've got the better build to take out a tank. I look at a paladin and go, hey, that ain't happening, and I run away.
In that same vein, like it's that. They continue to add new modes. So even in not with 5.1 but 5.15, which is always kind of sometimes that feels like a punch because I'm like, I'm looking forward to that in the mid patch. So that's still it's not even this week. Okay, I get it because you don't want to give me too many options when I log in on Tuesday.
I've never understood that.
Keep people subscribed.
It keeps people
subscribed.
And even if it is a development, pipeline issue, that's the lesson I've learned. It's like I believe in this dev team 100%. I believe in Yoshi P and his team, and to prove it for me, them putting different headgear for the different races, despite whatever, the team will work and they'll do whatever they can do. But some things I think are, when you look at the engine, when you look at how it came to be, that it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's also I'm fortunate that this game exists because they're going to lean into whatever it is. But PvP for me, let's make a new mode. Great. Now we're taking a small player base and dividing them even again, and can we just come up with whatever
something that works well. I agree with you on that. We stop making new modes, repair what the problem is. And I feel like you said it earlier, Jenga tower. The PvP in Final Fantasy is a Jenga tower, but we're literally on the last blocks on the bottom of the whole tower, and they're continually putting things on top of it.
You want to know how I fix PvP?
Well, how?
I think just like how they made healers for PvE, healers need to be DPS in PvP. And this is what we've run tests. When you go into PvP right now, whoever has the best healer is favored to win. Maybe something happens, they get lucky, but more than often than not, the person who had the team that had the most healing is the team that hands down destroyed and owned it. Mm-hmm. We ran custom PvP matches, and we had one rule: no healers. And the strategy changed. The action was fast and furious, and we had the best time we've had any time in PvP. Obviously, we're talking trash because we're all together. Like, everybody knows everybody there.
The matches went back and forth hard.
Yeah, hard.
Yeah,
like, and we're talking about like a
somebody.
massive shift. Like, all like we were winning, and then all of a sudden, like, no, they rallied and they just kind of swept through us. And it's like it changed. It made every map and every match. You never knew who was going to win.
Because you will die.
Right. And I was like, imagine, like, because I know healers are going to want to heal. It's the role restriction. You know, it's the fact that they have like, you have to have a ranged and a melee and a tank and a healer. Like, they have that rule set for feast, and that keeps that queue time forever long. And so
it does. Which makes people not even want to try it.
Exactly. And all of a sudden, it's like, if
you only have to get it to level 30.
Right.
So if a job is bad, they'll just level up another one. Like, there's no reason for that. It's not like you're protecting somebody.
And being that PvP runs off its own like action set, its own like set of rules, like just give everybody like their own like, oh my god, heal, you know, like I'm gonna like, and then have a like a long cooldown. So you're trying to do a strategy here, and then you go and sit here, and then you add in leaderboards, you add in like stats that persist
in the game. Don't make the website one. I hate the website.
Oh, that's the same thing for all the content. That's the same thing for Palace of the Dead. That's the same, like, all of this is this, you know, the free companies. Like, there's actually competition between free companies, but you have no idea about it because it exists on the website in the lodestone. So it's like,
I actually found that out like 6-7 months ago. A buddy of mine was like, I want to revitalize my free company to get high in the rankings. I'm like, rankings?
Yeah.
And I've been playing this game since 1.0, and it's like, what do you mean rankings?
but those systems themselves already exist in the game, and when we talk about
without healers, even tanks like had a value, because like stuns became incredibly valuable. So it wasn't just like the traditional jobs that you expect to be the best. A team of all that, it's like, well, that could still lose.
Hold on a second, guys, because the heat repair guy.
Yeah, go for it. And we're back from our short break. We want to thank Tacos for sponsoring this episode. That's right, tacos, delicious tacos. Get some for lunch.
I actually am going to get tacos for lunch.
That's awesome. It's a great day to have tacos. So again, you can check links in the description below that don't exist, but we do want to thank Tacos for sponsoring the channel and making videos like this possible. We just was like,
I love links down below that don't exist.
Like, where's that taco link, Brian? I want my 20% off my tacos. Like, that would
generic tacos, good at all retailers.
That would be literally like that'd be power that would be dangerous for me to wield. Okay, so we were talking about PvP and the changes that I want to see made, and we talked about leaderboards and all that. I think that in and of itself would help, like, give players the ability to create their own fun, create their own challenges. We talk about like the static. Chris has talked about the achievements, but statically the achievement system, the challenge log itself, like those are what we have always felt are simple little changes to help kind of drive that. And I think that would help drive content creation, which I think would help promote the game and bring more people into it. Benny, like, what are your thoughts though? Because like those are just my thoughts and changes that I want to see made for PvP. Chris, do you have a thought as well? Because you did your Chris eye.
I think Shadowbringers has had a weird relationship with content creation. So I think, Benny, you kind of talk about, like we were talking about beforehand, like, when do you make videos? Because people ask for Final Fantasy videos, but then you make them and they don't do as well. And so it's like, well, who am I making videos for? And it's because this game has a lull, and the initial launch should have been this incredible mega push of content, but the streams were down. Like there were lower streams for Shadowbringers when it launched than expected because people were worried about spoilers. So like Final Fantasy specifically has a really weird relationship with content creation.
It's because it's story driven. That's the issue. And then when it comes to actual gameplay, there's no random factor. The reason why I can go from Final Fantasy to Minecraft and get more viewers on Minecraft, or go from Destiny to a weird game called Breath Edge and get more viewers on Breath Edge, is because I'm not that personality in Final Fantasy or Destiny. And what people want to see is the randomness. In my opinion, the reason why games like Fortnite do so well is all marketing, all that stuff aside, the reason why competitive games like Fortnite do so well is you don't know what's going to happen. So if you're into that kind of a game, well, I don't know. Is Chris gonna kick ass this round? Is he gonna get destroyed this round? Is he gonna build a castle? I gotta watch and find out, because there is no linear path that you're gonna follow.
And it leads to
Final
more
Fantasy, you know.
And it leads to more of those real reactionary moments where
Right.
I was brought to just like tears in Dragon Quest XI, and my wife looked at me and she's like, "I wish you were streaming it." And I'm like, "I'm glad I'm not. Nobody needs to see a grown man cry."
Yes, they do.
But it's like she had that moment. She's like, "This is such a real moment for you," like, because Dragon Quest XI affected me on a deep level. Like, I talk about it. Nobody watched that video, but it's like whatever. Like, it exists if you guys are curious. But with 14, like, our relationship with the story is so personal. Our relationship with Emmett Selk, our relationship with the Scions, our relationship with the world is so personal that it is like kind of this special little thing, especially now where you look at like other single player Final Fantasy game. People might come out to watch it. I played 15. People came and watched me play 15. There isn't necessarily, because it is also a static game, but we've had so many years of investment. It's kind of like you're finally getting to this pivotal moment in the narrative that, yeah, like, nobody wants to watch me watch the the end game. It's like, yeah, like, no, I'm gonna go experience it. Like, the fact is that people were getting beat up because they were coming out of the theater yelling out spoilers because some people suck. It's just like,
right.
And that's the thing. I look at 14, like, I look at the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe right now. Like, there is that experience, and then there happens to be this other game that I really enjoy and appreciate. But in and of itself, like, there are definitely some shortcomings. I think PvP being one of them. PvP, if they would invest in it, I think people would show up for it. It works in these games. Yeah.
I agree, because I think that's one of the big, because like I said, I always go back to the personality thing, but the second thing that draws people into WoW is that RNG nature, and the biggest RNG thing is the PvP, and they've done a good job of at least making it interesting. And I don't think Final Fantasy's ever made their PvP interesting. They tried too hard to make it Final Fantasy, and when they made the new hotbar at the bottom and we got new jobs, I was like, oh, they're going in a direction where PvP is going to be unique, and I feel like they tried it, and we're like, oh, no, forget it. Let's make rival wings.
They do that with a lot of things.
Yeah.
They take a half step in a new direction, which could be interesting, and if it's not immediately successful, they give up.
Yeah.
We have a lot of partial systems in this game.
Aren't we also then disservicing ourselves because we said that we want them to do different things, and then we're also bemoaning the different things that they've tried?
Well, I think that leads to 5.1 not being anything experimental. Because anything they try experimental, like Eureka, gets a huge amount of backlash, and they have to spend all this development time to fix it. And when Heaven and High came out,
Blue Mage got a lot of backlash.
The thing is that Eureka was, when you look at the third stage of it, like, that was what was planned for the first. Like, when I talk about it as an engineer, like, when I sat down, it was meeting with Yoshi P was a great moment of peace for me, because I'm sitting here looking at the game, seeing these threads from an engineer's mindset, because that's how I feed my family, and I'm sitting here like, why haven't they just finished the thought? And it's that they would if they could. Eureka being a huge delay, that was a huge impact also on just Stormblood. I was like, why does this feel less than? Why does it feel thin when compared to Heaven's Word, compared to ARR? Like, is it just thinning out? Like, are they just done? And it's that, honestly, they're probably working on their next game or something big, and people were like, oh, that's Shadowbringers. No, it's not. Like, Shadowbringers, from a narrative perspective, they crushed it, but from a game and a development perspective, Eureka was delayed. Like, and it was supposedly going to be in 4.1, and then they had to push it to 4.2, the half patch, and then it wasn't even still finished, and then it took it still another 6 months for it to finally around, and everybody who got to that point was like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. You still got to go sludge through this stuff earlier, because it is so hard for them, especially Go ahead.
I wanted to do Baldizzi Arsenal, and I'd gotten off the train too early, because I rode it for several stops, being like, oh, it's gonna build to something, and then it wasn't. So I got off, and then people started playing BA, and I was like, oh no, like,
BA was good.
Now I'd have to get back on that train.
I took a week off of work to catch up so I could do BA.
Oh, it looked so fun. So to talk more about content creation, then that explains why there's not more PvP creators. That explains why there's not more interest in, like, watching people who are, like, gearing up for the next World First race in between Ultimates, because the gaps are so big because of the development cycle. And but it doesn't explain why there's not more success in places like the storytelling. Like, so we had FS Asher for a long time, who's moved more into narrative and actually plays a lot of games outside of 14. You know, you have people who investigate interesting kind of tidbits and stuff with like Larry Czar playing off the humor in the game, who is posting less and less. So when I look at channels like Comicstorian, where you would have the chance to go in and give us the entire backstory up to this point, when you have 400 hours through a single playthrough, each patch should be an interesting chance to go back and kind of catch people up. Why do more creators like that not exist? Like, why is
the story element?
Yeah.
I think overall, because so a lot of people aren't actually aware of this, but when I started doing YouTube, we started doing gaming videos, normal Let's Plays, and that led to doing stories to all the games. We explained the backstory to Metal Gear, we explained the backstories to early Final Fantasies and Assassin's Creed. The problem is every one of the brothers started doing all these weird deep dive speculation videos, because we were one of the first ones that did a lot of that, and then everyone started doing it. And I feel like lore-wise, it's not what I've seen with a trend with early days of just explaining the plot to a game and people being like, oh, thank you, I can go play the sequel, has now turned into a game only seems to hit those notes when they don't tell you anything. So Destiny 2, you guys have Bife on last. Yeah. Part of the reason why I'm so interested in the Destiny 2 lore is because you can't find it in the game. I'm not missing it. You got to piece together that freaking puzzle. You know? Why do you think Five Nights at Freddy's lore videos did so well? Because they're not telling you the story. You know, Fortnite, everyone speculated forever until the world ended. And they're all like, what is happening in Fortnite? And I feel like narratively, we've gone in a direction where linear stories, people just want to do themselves and they don't really want them fully explored for them. They want to play it or not watch it.
Right.
What people want is for a story that doesn't have direct answers, and they want you to explain that. So look at Destinies and the Dark Souls and the Fortnites and all that stuff, you know?
Well, and that then leads into, again, promotion. I think one of the things that it's that earned media concept. If anybody doesn't know, just to define it, earned media is what we're all in the business of right here. It's that we're fans of X, and then we want to go talk about that. We want to go make guides or videos or whatever, or streams, and we want to just engage and have conversations like we would like in normal life. Like, hey, we sit around talking about video games. That's how Chris and I's channel formed. It's like, hey Chris, why don't we just hit record on these hour-long conversations that we have about what's going on with Final Fantasy, etc. It's like, that sounds like fun. And here we are years later and things are working. So it's that I honestly, because we've seen that. We've seen that when we had Scott Zone on. It's like, yeah, there is an actual dip with that, which from an algorithmic perspective, because again, like we said at the top of the show, you get YouTubers together, the algorithm's going to come up. From an algorithm perspective, like it doesn't then promote the video. And people, there's a mindset, and I'm curious, Benny, on your thoughts here, because there's a mindset, I don't agree with it. Does negative content hurt games?
What do you mean? Like, give me an example of negative content.
Like just essentially being critical of a game.
If I say why 5.1 is the end of Final Fantasy XIV, does that hurt 14?
Clickbait.
No, I actually hate that exactly what you said, because that's what happens to a lot of games. Fortnite is dying. It's not dying.
Right.
You're not interested in the latest gun. Final Fantasy XIV is dying. It's not dying. You just lost interest in the latest patch. But the problem is, I feel like what I've noticed, at least in the world of content, people look for like-minded individuals who also hate their stuff more than people who are interested into the game, from what I've seen, or the TV shows and stuff like that. For me, if I make a video that says Flash Season 6 is amazing, I will get less views than if I do Flash Season 6 is a dumpster fire. You know, and everyone wants to know why. And I get more like-minded people whenever you hate on things. And that's what I hate about that, because it almost turns into a cycle of content creation where we have to make these hate videos once a week or once a month just to get new viewers to check out content. You know, I don't think it does anything negative, because more often than not, at least for me, if someone puts out a hate video on a game, I then go, well, now I want to go see what is he talking about? Is the latest gun of Destiny that bad that he's quitting the game? But he made a clickbait video to get me to watch it, which I did, and now I'm going to go play the game more. So I don't think it actually negatively affects the game.
Yeah.
But because of the views, I think everyone makes those videos.
PewDiePie put out a video, don't play this game. It was Flappy Bird, and it went crazy to the point where people are playing it and they don't know they're playing a meme. And that's just kind of the nature. And full disclosure, I've made a Final Fantasy XIV is dying video. I stand by it. I think it's an incredible video. Has nothing to do with the game's population. It has everything to do with what we're talking about here on this podcast.
Yeah. I made 2 videos back to back. I talked about the 5 reasons I think this game is good for you, and I talked about the 5 reasons that I think maybe it wouldn't be. And both of those lists start with story. If you love story, this is a good game for you. If you do not like games that are like tied to story and I just want to do my own thing, Final Fantasy XIV is gonna drive some frustration. There might be other aspects of the game that are make it worth it, but you're gonna have to do the MSQ. And so and I made that list and we ran them back-to-back days with near identical thumbnails. And one said 5 reasons it's terrible, and one said 5 reasons it's amazing. And the terrible one got more people that love the game, more people giving advice on how to get started, and crushed the other one in views. So it was better for Final Fantasy. It was better for us. It was a negative title. And it was literally us saying, like, it can't be that easy. And it is. It's 100% that easy.
And you open with that, check out like the reasons why you should. And so it's just like, we're going to look and compare and contrast. Now, YouTube today, we would have to put that as one video, like the 5 reasons why you shouldn't, or something of that nature, because you got to,
because you want it over 10 minutes.
You got to get the length.
Yeah, you got to get that watch time. And that's where it's like, how much of gaming today, as we kind of wind this podcast down, because I think overall, we're all really excited for 5.1. Overall, we're just wanting to hopefully maybe, at least I think for me, I'd love to see what the vision might be that Yoshi P wants to deliver in the next 2 years and 3 years. You don't have to tell me expansion, you don't have to tell me story, but what do they want to deliver? Do they have anything that they're wanting to deliver? Not from we've got a couple surprises. I think honestly, that's what I would love to hear. We've got a few surprises coming your way. Oh, cool! That's speculation. That's getting excited.
I feel like they're nervous to do that because of the Eureka backlash. They told us about Eureka so far in advance that we were just like, where is it?
Well, yeah, and then we
I
waited.
don't think you announce anything anymore. I think you say Final Fantasy 16.
That's true.
Playable today.
Yeah. Well,
it's already installed on your 14 launcher.
It's already installed.
Just play it.
We're getting the new launcher. That would be so funny. Like,
is there a new game in there?
New launcher? Like, what's this Play 16 on here? Like, I don't know.
That subscription has carried over.
That would blow my mind on that regards. But let's
16 is going to be an MMO, and it's going to get there's going to be a $20 sub for 11, 14, and 16. I'm calling it now.
See, like whether it's 16 or 17, because it's like ultimately 15's been out and a long time now. Whether it's 16 or 17, I agree with you. The fact that they didn't announce a publisher subscription at E3 this year was mind blowing. I was really surprised by that they're like, because that's where the model is going, and one subscription to rule them all. Like, yeah, I would pay $20 for 11, for and that's where, from a narrative perspective, like to your point where you think that the next one could tie into the story of this one, where they're keeping New Game Plus, where they're not going to shut it down and let people play. That allows them to say all the new content is dropping over here, but you still have access to this because all of this is supporting its own ecosystem. You want more of a sandbox? We've got a product for you. Final Fantasy XI is available. You can go run around in that world and do whatever.
I mean, 11's up and running perfectly fine. They're trying to do a resurgence right now. If they would just fix the interface, I would return.
And kill Play Online and bring it to consoles again. Like if they were able to,
I don't care about consoles. Just give me a true windowed mode and let it work with my keyboard without like a 90,000 extra keys that don't matter.
Yeah, dude.
That's all I want.
Preach it, brother.
I tried to get back into that. I'm like, why is this button for the menu? What is this? I can't remap anything. I got to plug a controller in. Now this just doesn't work right.
I got a guide for you. See, let's transition here. Kind of the final thought. I'd like to get some thoughts on your from the algorithm perspective, because obviously you've got bigger numbers. Last time we checked.
No, I've plummeted, man. I got nothing left.
Comicstorian is dying. That's a new video.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, it's like, so when that perspective, like when you see that kind of shift in terms of length, my question to you is, from a gaming perspective, these algorithmic shifts, like I honestly worry about the culture of gaming and what kind of games are being made because of somebody's, algorithm shifting one way or the other. Longer videos, etc. Like Like, do you see that same kind of thing? Do you share any kind of worries like that?
About going longer?
Well, I'm saying that the subtle shifts in the algorithm have led to some of the frustrations people have. But this is at least how I see it. So you look at streaming and you look at content creation, driving multiplayer games. Everybody's like, oh, single player games are great. Yeah, like you go and experience that, and then you return to these games, which are content, the creator economy, the earned media is setting the tone. And I think that's where 14 has struggled, is because of the algorithm. And I think that's where these other games have succeeded because of the algorithm. And you see 14, and the reason why I feel this is true is you see 14 jump to the top of Twitch whenever there's an ultimate that drops, whenever certain things come out. Like it really will compete in those spheres, and it just doesn't have the staying power.
I'm not really understanding what the actual question is. I'm sorry, Brian.
No, you're good. I suck at
I don't think content creation is damaging gaming any more today than it has been. I think actually pushing to longer length will get us away from that instant. I need that hot. So Brian and I got a chance to submit clips for a company to kind of put out as like they're trying to get into gaming space, and they were like, hey, we're looking to use some gaming clips and we'd love to use yours, and in trade we'll drive traffic to work to game. And I submitted some clips along with, I'm sure, dozens of other channels, and our clips didn't get used. And I reached out and I said, hey, how come our clips didn't get used? I submitted clips of me clearing trials, and they said it just didn't have the level of excitement we were looking for. And that's because I was running my weekly clears, because I thought that'll be a really nice showcase of what it is to play endgame. And I'm calling out, I'm like, oh, that guy's about to die, and he dies. And like, but it doesn't have that like, oh my gosh, that like being the last person alive in Fortnite.
They want that energy.
And they're saying the energy, and you're like, well, maybe it's just not you, Chris, but like when I play Halo, I have that energy. So I know it's the game. Because me playing Halo is something I can't put on work to game because we keep our language reasonable here. So like I am excited. I just don't get that excited about it. That doesn't mean I'm not having a good time. It just doesn't have that. But when you talk about extending things to like 10, 20, Bife put out like a 4-hour video, you can't have that level of like adrenaline running for 4 hours straight. It would be exhausting. You'd shut it off. Right. And so it gives you a chance to dive into deeper things. You talking about the shift in gaming. The other thing is like, I would have agreed with you 6 months ago, Brian, but we're starting to see things like Other Worlds is getting some amazing press. And I listened to Scale Up's review, and he made some valid points about how we don't have good narrative being told anymore. And there's these huge dry spells where like good narrative single player games, there just aren't that many. And so the reason they're not getting that much press coverage is because there's nothing to cover.
Yeah. Okay, I understand what you're saying now.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, I suck sometimes. I get lost in and trip on my own words.
I was just trying to put together the question. I'm like,
Yeah.
It sounds like you're explaining more the situation than giving me a question to actually answer.
Yeah, I'm getting better. By episode 100, I'll be a really good podcaster.
I mean, I agree with you on that one. Like when I stream Destiny, I'll get better numbers than when I do Final Fantasy because I go into Crucible and it's random and I get hyped and we make funny little jokes and things like that inside of there because things are happening and I can't foretell them. I feel like I get more reaction to my survival games because I don't know what's going to happen. So I get hyped. Yeah. I get excited. I get a Final Fantasy and I'm like, hey guys, chill day. We're going to level monk. Ready to go in low level? Oh, it's that same dungeon again.
So does that damage gaming that content creation has made that almost a requirement in the development cycle?
Right.
I could see that kind of. Because if somebody is trying to explore Final Fantasy XIV and they go in and they see you or me jump in there and be like, doing my weekly trials, cool. But then they watch me go to Destiny and I'm like, yeah, look at the grenade launcher.
Well, I'm literally
they know which one's bringing more excitement.
I wish somebody like I haven't had the time to do it. So otherwise I would, but I'm always kind of hopeful that somebody goes through my PvP matches and just clips like you could do I think it would be hilarious in my mind. Maybe I'll do it, and it probably was not funny, but it's just me getting kills because I haven't, for whatever reason, over the last couple of months, like playing Destiny, I just go sit down, sit down as I just knock people down. And I'm just like, I would love to see, and maybe I'll just do it for me. Maybe I won't publish it, but it would be just me like back to like without the gaps and kills, especially when there's a multiple people. And that's just my reaction. And I would do the same. I've even called that out in Final Fantasy XI's 14's PvP.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sit down, Dragoon. You know, like, I don't know why I've defaulted to that mindset or that phrase, but I'm going to trademark it unless somebody else has, and then we get some shirts. So, I don't know, but it's like, you're right. There is this energy and PvE content I love to death. I love it. I think that 14 needs to fix the PvP problem. Hands
They need
down.
something that is non-stop exciting.
Yeah.
Because right now, everyone sees us getting excited for story and leveling up jobs. Final Fantasy, as much as I hate to say it, because I love the series, I've been with the MMO since the beginning of 11.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what you said, Chris. It's become so casual, so easy, that even during those periods when I don't have any time to do it, I can get on and complete my weekly stuff, which is great for their concurrent sub numbers. But what am I getting excited about? Hey, I'm logging back on and running the twinning for the 50th goddamn time. You know, like the exciting element is got a really shitty healer this time.
Could be ultimate maps.
That could be.
Ultimate maps would be fun to watch.
Yeah, maps are fun. Maps
Ultimate
are actually
maps.
fun.
Maps that are punishing, like maps that,
The maps
that
are
just
too easy.
wreck
They're too
people.
easy.
Yeah.
Like maps with like Diablo style modifiers. It's like, oh, exploding guys! Like,
that the modifiers thing, and like I do want to like draw some conclusions. So we'll have to get you on, Benny. Maybe in a couple of weeks when we've gone hands on with 5.1 to kind of get our hot takes from here to then to now. But but like on that note, like modifiers in themselves are like a title itself. Can you do this with these insane modifiers? Like it just takes a concept and it turns it on its head. Like imagine every time like you kill an enemy, it explodes and puts out damage. It's like, okay guys, like that changes the strategy, it changes the approach. There are risks with all of that, right? You end up building out a system that eventually could be too heavy and collapse and nobody does it, right? The worst thing they would make would be something that nobody does. And like I hope to God everybody uses New Game Plus, because if nobody uses it, then I'm just going to be frustrated with the development. You know, it's going to be like, well, I wonder what they could have made instead of this. But I hope I'm in the minority. And then Benny, on your podcast, on your live stream, you were saying, well, maybe it didn't take that many resources to make, and I hope that maybe
I'm hoping it really was just more of an overlay kind of a thing, and that was all they really had to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I could list off a dozen different ways, like you said with modifiers. What if Heaven on High allows you to put in modifiers which could increase drop rates?
Yeah.
How hard would that be to make? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a developer, but like you could put in simple things, and you can even make it because like Destiny allows you to put modifiers in that makes it impossible to beat it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can literally make it impossible to beat your Nightfall. Let the developers be like, here's the modifiers. If you fuck it up, that's on you.
Yeah, and then you just but that puts the sandbox back into players' hands.
Right.
So,
and I have one idea for PvP before we close out.
Please.
But if they are so dead set on this four-man team PvE, why don't they do like they did back in Ion or even in Gambit? We are PvE where we have to race to the end, and whoever can get to the ending gets to duke it out.
We've been doing
PvE the whole way with just like a really shoddy PvP finale.
Yeah,
make that.
we've been doing that. That's what we actually been doing for our Nightfalls, and I've honestly thought about doing that from a 14 stream perspective, getting two teams of 4 people to race the same dungeon to see who could clear it the quickest or something. Time
trials. Why is that not in there?
Yeah, exactly. But like bake it into the game. I think to answer your question, just like if the developers could, I think they would. I believe in the dev team that much. I think the reason why we can't have nice things is a lot to do with the engine and how what people refer to as spaghetti code with 1.0 to 2.0. And I would think that Yoshi P is like probably just as frustrated because it'd be like, yeah, let's do this. Like, yeah, because like he's always like wanting to make the game players want to make. I think our critiques aren't unique critiques by any stretch of the imagination. If they are unique critiques, leave your critiques in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe button, and share this out. Blah, 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 content creation. Betty, where can people find you? What you got? You working on anything exciting that people might enjoy?
Comicstorian, covering comic books, movies, TV shows, all focused around basically the comic book universe. We do everything from cover the storyline to Final Fantasy XIV to telling you the latest situation with Batman and Superman fighting against Superman Who Laughs. Just literally launched that right now. My team was working on it while we were on the show. And I also stream over on Eligible Monster, where I play Final Fantasy XIV and survival games, basically.
Links will be in the description below, guys. Go make sure you're giving him a follow, especially on Eligible Monster. We want to see his gaming content grow. I think you're an excellent content creator.
Like that.
And I think you're an excellent streamer, something I really enjoyed. watching over the last couple of months since we've gotten to know you and gotten to know you better. Chris, what are you working on? Where can people find us? If they haven't found us already, then that's a shocker.
Well, I would say they probably found us this far into one of our podcasts, but maybe not. So I am playing a lot of games right now. I'm looking forward to BlizzCon and the brief touch on 5.1. There are a huge number of things in 5.1 I am looking forward to. My complaints in this show were entirely about what it means for the long-term health of the game. In the short term, I'm really excited to get into the crafting and gathering, and of course, new dungeons are always fun. New raids are always fun. And so I'm looking forward to working on that. I had a blast talking with Bife last week. We had a great podcast. If you guys haven't seen that, next week we'll be talking to Mione, hopefully with kind of a little more thoughts on this. We'll see. I was really hoping that the 29th kind of bummed me out. I really would have preferred it being launched this week. Would have been a lot easier if they just centered their schedule on mine, but I don't think they checked my calendar. So
this is the second time, guys, that you brought me in to talk about something and the date got pushed back and we just kind of spitballed for an hour.
Right. Yeah,
we gotta have you back-to-back weeks. We'll push things out months.
Well, I've got a baby coming. Well, not me personally. My wife's having the baby, and that's happening at the end of November. So I wouldn't mind stocking up on a couple of these podcasts so they can kind of run, because I'm not going to be available to be a public figure by any stretch of the imagination. In that regards, though, I am really actually excited about checking out Outer Worlds on Friday. Now that we all have learned that Chris hates Final Fantasy XIV, and this
Fact.
That's what's going to be I know that's going to be a comment.
All of these hours have been just to get to this moment when I could say I hated it.
I put in 600 hours just to say this game. Thanks, lazy peon. Anyway, so we've got lots of stuff coming up for you guys, and I thank you all for hanging out. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
And I'm Benny.
Yes. Boom.
I don't know who was supposed to jump in there.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good. We do it to everybody, and we'll keep doing it. Yeah, we'll just make sure that your gap is shorter, so you're like, oh, I got this down.
I'm awesome.
Yeah.
Quick cut.
Be sure to follow. Yeah. Be sure to follow Benny, and be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast, and we will see you next time.